Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brad Mulhall, and this is my podcast. I'm calling it Perakee, and there will be a whole explanation behind it. It's actually a Toltec legend that I resonate with, but we'll get into that here on the first episode. This is just the introduction. This podcast is going to be about spirituality, paranormal, conspiracies, mostly. That's the stuff I'm interested in, but who knows, we'll talk about anything, or I'll talk to anybody who's interesting or that I find interesting or think that you might find interesting. A little bit about myself. Married, father of four. I work as a underground miner, drilling and blasting. I live on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, and I just like podcasts, and I like talking to interesting people, and I thought you all might be interested in that too. I have a lot of weird and strange experiences in my life, and it's led me on a path of pursuit and seeking and knowledge, and always interested, always reading, always endlessly watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts. And so I would like to talk to all these interesting people. A few strange things have happened to me in my life where I used to have this like praying mantis glowing figure come through the wall when I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, and it happened repeatedly lots of times, come in through the wall into my room, and then I would just like black out or faint or whatever. Fairly traumatizing situation. I guess when I was about 14, I was walking through the back of my mom's hair salon after school, and she was doing a lady's hair, and this lady's like, stop, that boy there, who's this boy? And my mom says, well, that's my son. Well, bring him over here. He's one of us. He's a Pleiadian. And she's asking me, do I remember why I came here? And I'm on this earth. I'm a spiritual force that has come here to break the matrix on this planet, fight the lizard people, and free mankind. And, I had never heard of the concept. This is 96. So the matrix hadn't come out. I was just a young 14. I didn't know the concept of a matrix, nor the lizard people either. I didn't get into David Icke until probably 2001, and that still to this day is one of my favorite conspiracies. And then later on in high school, lots of more like paranormal kind of ghost poltergeisty experience with a friend, and we got somebody to come clear a house, shamanistic native type spiritual guy, and after we did this ceremony and smudging and clearing the house, he takes me aside and tells me that I'm the gifted person and that this is my path and I'm supposed to do stuff like this like he does, and that my third eye is open now. And he was teaching me about energy and telling me how I'm sensitive to it and showing me how to move it and the polarity and magnetism in my hands and I could find electrical where the electricity came in from the pole out into the house, and I found that all on my own. He says, see, you got it. You can feel energy, and your life's going to be different from this day forward. You're open to these spiritual things now, and to be careful because, darker things or things can come for you if you're not careful. So that's pretty heavy stuff, along with, being told you're an alien and the mantis figure. And I guess the next most significant thing would be when I was about 22, I was at a full moon ceremony, and there was a palm reader there, and she gets to my hands, and of course, freaks out and says I have a special palms, special fingerprints that less than 1% of the population have, and most people, I guess the way I can explain it, have a heart line and a head line, but I don't have that. My heart and head line are one, and I have that on both hands. That's called the double simian crease, and there's that has to do with why I'm calling it the podcast Perakee. There's a whole Toltec legend behind that. There's many famous people that have it. All gods depicted in painting or statues have these lines in their hands, and the traits are like high energy, one-track minded, stubborn-headed, focused people. They usually end up being politicians, spiritual leaders, lots of rock stars, movie stars and such, like I said. So again, it was like for the third time somebody telling me I'm special, I'm different, I'm gifted, and all these events have led me to always be a seeker, always be interested, always pursuing knowledge, paranormal, out there, weird stuff. I mean, I just love it. I just eat it up. And so thought there'd be nothing better to do than have a podcast and get to talk to all these interesting people and like explore further into mysteries and spirituality and all these different things, and kind of chronicle it and do it along with all you wonderful folks. So yeah, I hope you like it. And the first episode coming up is with Larry Brinkley. He is the author, I guess how you put it, of The Legend of Parakeet. It was passed down to him, and we're going to be passing it on to you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brad Mulhall. This is the Perakee podcast. And with me today, I have Larry Brinkley, the author of The Legend of Parakeet and Perakee, sorry. And we're going to tell you all about it today. I guess getting down to the basics of it, it has to do with the double simian hand lines, which I have on both hands. And this is, I guess, what is this, a genetic mutation of sorts. It's a rarity. 1% of the population or less. Lots of famous people have it. Tony Blair, Hillary Clinton, Rainn Wilson, Robert De Niro, Joaquin Phoenix, Anthony Hopkins, Matthew Broderick, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, one of my favorite shows. Meghan Markle, Tony Robbins. Anyways, the list goes on. All gods, through my research, ever depicted in painting or statue seem to have the same markings on their hands, which is a single crease across the palm of your hand. Most people have a heart line and a head line. They have two lines, but us doubles or simians have one line across our hands, which means our head and heart line are one, or our head and heart are one. And there's a good story. I've always been fascinated with South American lore and that sort of thing. I was always into Carlos Castaneda when I was young, and then I found out in my early 20s that I was a double simian myself, and years later I found The Legend of Perakee, and we got Larry here today to explain to us all about that. Tell the people about yourself, Larry. Introduce yourself, tell them about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Well, my name is Larry Brinkley. I was born in Arkansas and moved to San Antonio, Texas when I was 2. Lived down there till I was 9. Then moved back here. Then at 17, I went in the military. So my dad works for American Airlines in San Antonio. We used to come up here to Arkansas twice a year for vacation, 2 weeks each time. My grandpa would tell me all these stories about Indians. He would take me and my brother in summertime, would take us out fishing. In the wintertime, he'd take us out hunting. We'd go all over the woods. And he was always talking about Indians this and Indians that. And he'd talk about the lines in their hands, talking about all different kinds of things. My brother and I just kind of thought he was nuts. Just an old man who was rattling about all these stories. We didn't know what he was talking about. We just loved our grandpa and loved being with him. And at 9, we moved up here, and I got to spend more time with him. Spent a lot of time with grandpa up to the time I was about 16, when I started driving, started meeting girls, started running around. So I quit having anything to do with my grandpa then. At 17, I got married, went in the Army. I was in the Army 7 years. When I got out of the Army, my grandpa was gone. So a lot of what I learned was from him at a very young age. And the Army was very stressful. Anybody's ever been in the military can tell you that. And I went through a period of drinking and did a few drugs, never got into drugs, but I got drinking pretty heavy. And in 1975, I had a vision, I guess you'd call it. I've been out drinking all night. I told my wife I'd be back at 8, but here it was 5 o'clock in the morning before I got home, and she was very angry. I lay down in bed at 5 o'clock. It seemed like I died. It seemed like I fell for miles. And I had like a vision where I was with my grandpa. You know, he was still alive at the time, and I was in Germany, which is 8,000 miles away. I don't understand why I had vision with my grandpa, but it was back when I was a kid again. We were in the woods fishing and hunting, and he was telling all these stories again. And it seemed like I stayed with him about a month, about 30 days. And then I knew I had to come back here. And I woke up, and exactly an hour later, it was 5 o'clock in the morning when I laid down. At 6 o'clock, I woke up. It's like I didn't have a hangover, even though I've been drinking all night. I felt refreshed. I felt wide awake, like I've been on vacation for a month. And told my wife, I'm going to quit drinking. She said, yeah, I've heard that before. But I did. My whole life changed after that vision. And from then on, I started reading everything, getting my hands on about religion, Buddhism, Satanism, Christianity, every religion in the world, South American, Carlos Castaneda. I started reading everything I could find, trying to understand what that vision meant. And I got out of the Army in 78. My grandpa was already gone. And then in 1980, I went to Houston, still trying to find what that vision that I'd had in 75 meant. So I started going to Rosicrucians, started going to various sects and denominations named Houston. I got involved in the Satanic sect. I got involved with some Hindu people, some Wiccans. I got involved with a lot of different people, still trying to understand what it was I saw in 1975. In May of 82, I got laid off in the middle of the oil field crisis. We had a huge, they laid off like 60,000 people in Houston in like a month. And I was one of those people, so I didn't have a job. During that time, though, I had another vision, second vision in my life. This vision, I saw myself up in the sky, like 100 miles above the earth, looking down at the earth. I could see the United States. I could see where Houston was. I could see all the lights where big cities were and everything. I saw these little specks leave different parts of the country coming toward the big cities. And every time a little speck would come, a little speck of light would come to the city would grow brighter and brighter. And I saw a speck that left Murfreesboro, Arkansas, where I'm from. I saw it go to Houston. And then everybody started going away from big cities, going back to where they're from. I watched that little speck. I knew it was me coming back to Arkansas. I didn't know what it meant. Anyway, 3 or 4 days later, I got laid off. And through no fault of my own, we ended up having to move back to Arkansas. This was just a few days after I had that vision, for lack of a better word. I came back to Arkansas, and I still kept trying to understand what these things were going through my mind, what I was having. And I went back to that vision I had in 75, then again in the one in 81. I went to the diamond mine, which is like 3 miles from where I lived. And I hung around the diamond mine for a couple of years trying to figure out if there's something about that vision that I saw, that little speck of diamond, little speck of light coming back, looked like it come back to the diamond mine. But I didn't find anything around the diamond mine that told me anything. There's another place called Kadoha. It's Indian mounds, 1,000-year-old Indian mounds that are here in my hometown. And you can find about the diamond mine and Kadoha on the internet. They have their own sites. Anyway, I got to know the guy named Clifton Cruz who ran the site. And I hung around there for a couple of years, talking to him a lot, trying to understand what these things inside me were trying to tell me, where they came from. But I couldn't find anything. One night, I was out in my front yard, and I heard very distinctly a voice calling my name. It said, Larry. I heard it just like me and you talking. And I looked toward the direction where it's from. I realized it's right toward the diamond mine, which is right toward Kadoha. You know, like this diamond mine, like 3 miles, and 3 miles farther, Kadoha. I couldn't figure, but I spent years hanging around those two places trying to understand what about them would cause me to have these visions. Then I realized that in that same direction was this place my grandpa used to take me called the Indian Graveyard. I walked over there. It's the middle of the night. And when I walked into the graveyard, it's like I came home. It's like my grandpa was there waiting for me. And I I was feeling like, how could I have forgotten you all this time? I spent the next 5 years of my life, from 1985 to 1990, every moment I had when I wasn't working, on weekends and night, I spent over there in graveyard. And during that time, when all these stories of Parakeet came to me, I kept remembering things my grandpa talked about when I was a kid, these bits and pieces of memory. And then they started fleshing out in full stories. That's where the legend of Parakeet came from. Did my grandpa tell me these stories? Or did some kind of ghost come down in the graveyard and tell them to me? I don't believe in ghosts. So all I can think of is my grandpa told me these stories when I was little, but I forgot them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So
They,
you're not sure whether like it was the influence of your grandfather in these stories stored way back in your subconscious, finally coming forward, you know, being in the familiar area, or this or that, or almost maybe a channeling of senses of maybe spirits, and maybe both at the same time, right? Like who knows? But obviously powerful visions that propelled you to write this story. And yeah, if you I don't know where to start, how far back. I know it goes with your grandfather and even your great grandfather. So where's the best place you think to start with the story?
my grandpa, from what I remember, my childhood, like I said, nobody remembers exactly what was told to them when they're 5 years old, 6 years old. But I
No.
remember bits and pieces in my mind that I know came from my grandpa. And he told me that, and he always talked about the lines in his hand and the lines in my hand. He had the simian lines too. And he said his grandpa had them. His grandpa was an Indian, was a Caddo Indian, and he was a Perakee. And I was given to understand when I was a child that Parakeet meant medicine man. Later on, I came to understand that there are Parakeet who are not medicine men. Just because a person is a Parakeet doesn't make him a medicine man. A Parakeet can become a medicine man, but that's all according to his energies. Anyway, he told me his grandpa, a man named Toe, was a medicine man of the Bow tribe of the Caddo. They had their village in Boto, Arkansas, which is where I'm from, about 3 miles from the Arkansas diamond mine. And the tribe died out in 1911, no, 1912. They died out from smallpox. And my grandpa was left on his own after that.
Wow.
He,
Yeah, we had the same
he,
thing up
spent,
here.
he spent a lot of time when he was growing up with his grandpa, just like I did with my grandpa. And then his grandpa died in 1912 from smallpox. And so he was left on his own, just like after I got out of the Army, my grandpa was gone, so I was left on my own. So a lot of what he taught me was what his grandpa taught him. And I'm sure a lot of it was things that came to him after grandpa died. And then same with me. Basics of the stories came from my grandpa telling me stories from his grandpa, but most of it came from when I was in the graveyard.
Right, and there's quite the story behind your grandfather. I've read through the legend of Perakee. He was a minister for years until the night of your birth.
Yeah, he became a, let's see, he went in the Army in 1918. He was born in 1892, so that one made him 26, I guess. He went in the Army, and he went and fought in World War I in Germany. I have a picture of him in Charleston, South Carolina. It's dated June 1st, 1918, when he became a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason.
Wow.
And, that picture. And so I know, and he was in his uniform. You can tell it's a brand new uniform. And this was in June 1st, 1918. The war was over in November 1918, so it could have only been in the war a few months. By the time he went over there on the ship, it was probably July or August before he even got there. And then within 4 or 5 months, the war was over. But during that time, he got gassed with, I guess, chlorine gas, whatever gas the Germans used. He got shot in the stomach. And it took him a few years to recuperate. When he did, he became a Methodist minister. And that was 1921 when he became a minister. And he ministered till 1954. So for 33 years, he was a Methodist minister. And he had those stories of Parakeet in his mind. And he used to tell me that when he preached to the congregation, he was telling stories of Parakeet, but he couldn't tell them it was Parakeet. He had to use stories out of the Bible, but that was his way of teaching. And it's like my way of teaching was using poetry for a lot of years before I actually sat down and wrote the Parakeet stories. I wrote a lot of poetry. A lot of them were made into songs, and they're out there, and people have heard them around the world. And that was my way of teaching about the Parakeet without telling them it was Parakeet.
Yeah, that's cool. Like when I read through the legend of Parakeet, lots of similarities, lots of correlations between other religions and other practices and other things that I've always studied. Like it just hit with me, like bang, bang, bang. Lots of connections, lots of synchronicities, like with my own pursuits of knowledge and stuff like that. Like it really, really clicked with me. It really, really resonated with me, and that's not like now I identify as a Parakeet tribe, Parakeet Nation. It's an astounding story. Yeah, you got to tell the story about your grandfather and the tent and the night you were born.
The night I was born, it was the story my grandpa told me. That later my mom and grandma told me. They confirmed it, and also a friend of my grandpa's confirmed it. My grandpa was preaching at a tent revival in a place called McCaskill. It was a real bad storm, and there was lightning real bad, and the rain was coming down so hard it made like a flood out there. The tent was in the middle of a pasture, and there's water coming into the tent, and everybody got wet. My grandpa was running up and down the aisle. He was a holy roller preacher, so he's yelling at the top of his lungs. Anyway, every time he'd run, he'd splash water all over everybody, and everybody would get wet. They didn't care. Anyway, he was standing at the podium, and they said he raised his hand to make a point, and just as he did, lightning struck. And they don't know if it struck the pole or what, but when it did, all electricity went out. And from the lightning flashing around, they could see my grandpa standing there with his arm up in the sky. And they thought he got struck with lightning or something. And all of a sudden he put his hand down and the tent flap opened. My grandpa just walked out into the storm. And a friend of his later told me that he would swear, he said he was there that night. He said he would swear when my grandpa walked out into the storm, there were two Indians standing there.
Wow.
Anyway, the next morning he showed up at the hospital where I was born. He walked into the room where I was, and nurses tried to stop him. He kept on going anyway. He picked me up and looked at my hands and fell down and hugged me and started crying. He was 62 years old then. I think he felt that he was not going to have anybody to tell the stories to. Anyway, he stopped preaching that night.
But he's like, for folks that don't know, like he saw the lines on your hands. Like that's where he has his redemption, his salvation is that his grandson is the same, and he can pass the knowledge on. Because you told me before he never spoke to anybody about Perakee, about the legend. He kept it all to himself.
As far as I can tell, he never told anybody. I asked my mom about it later. She didn't know what I was talking about. She told me I was nuts. I asked my grandma. She didn't know nothing about it. I asked different friends of his. There's one guy who's a real close friend of his told me he always thought my grandpa never believed the Bible. You know, he's a preacher. And even though for 33 years, he was a traveling minister. He didn't have a church of his own. He went to tent revivals all over Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas. And he said people came from miles around to hear him talk because they loved listening to him. He said, I always had the feeling that your grandpa, he said, I always had the feeling your grandpa didn't believe a word he was saying. I said, what do you mean? He was a preacher. He said, well, he was raised with the Indians, you know. So, so my grandpa's friend thought that he was telling stories about the Indian more than he was about the Bible. A lot of people love listening to him preach. Did it quit on us?
So
It froze.
it froze, but my son, he's a wizard. He'll take that out.
Okay.
So
Anyway,
back to your grandfather.
he I guess he was a minister, but for all practical purposes, he was a white man medicine man. He told the stories of Perakee, but he did it in using the stories out of the Bible. And he did that for 33 years until I was born. Then he stopped. He stopped preaching then. He told everybody he retired. He was 62 years old when I was born. So by the time I was 5 years old, he was already 67. Well, he was already an old man by the time he ever started telling me the stories.
What a treasure. I know I spent a lot of time with my on my mother's side, my her father, my grandfather, had his general store, and I was raised up. We lived like less than a kilometer away from them, so I was raised up very close with him, and sitting back there with my grandfather and grandmother, listening to all their stories, trials, tribulations, living through world wars, living through Great Depressions, coming across from Ireland on a boat all by himself when he's 22 years old, 23 years old, and making his way and making a life. It's a real treasure to have your grandparents in your life and that knowledge passed down, and especially in your case with the legend. So we know all about your grandpa now. Can we get into the legend of Perakee, and where does it start? I know it's a Toltec legend. I've been looking up more every day, that there's pyramids and there's mounds near your house. There's pyramids in South America that have Parakeet warriors all standing around the pyramids, and fascinating stuff.
The Parakeet legend is built around the lines in the hand, the simian lines, but it's got not a whole lot to do with the simian lines. It's also talks about the Toltec Empire, but it's really got a whole lot to do with the Toltec Empire. The Parakeet stories have to do with each individual learning how to understand himself and how to balance the things that are him, the energies that are him, so that he can be a better human being. All the other things like the palmistry and the stories of the Toltecs, those are all side issues. For 2003, when I first wrote the Parakeet stories and sat down and wrote them in fashion that all been floating around in my head for years. In 2003, I wrote them. This is 2021, so it's 18 years ago. For 18 years, people have been texting me, and I've been talking to them nearly every night. People talk to me in private messaging about Parakeet stories, and they keep going through the same thing. They want to know about the palmistry. They want to know about the Toltecs. I keep trying to tell them, that's Mox Nix. That's not even the main issue of the story. That's got, that's kind of like the skeleton the stories hang on, but the true meat of the stories are trying to help you understand how to live your life to be a better human being. And I kind of get aggravated, kind of get frustrated. I kind of wish I'd never mentioned the simian line. I kind of wish I'd never mentioned the Toltecs, because those are the things that people want to talk about, and they got nothing to do with the Parakeet. Nothing. They were where they came from, and there's some of the background about how they came about, but that's it.
Right. Yeah, I can understand. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. Principles for living. Right. And those are across the board in any religion, in anything, to be a good person and stuff. Yours is more a little in depth, and why it resonates with me. The Parakeet story, the balancing of energies. I'm myself very sensitive to energy, and energies, and coming from other people, coming from myself, coming
Yeah.
from the earth and nature. I'm very sensitive to those sorts of things. So that's why this story made a lot of sense to me. And I know you regret it, but for the viewers, for the listeners, if you could give us the history of it, passed down where the legend comes from.
It's kind of like Christianity. Christianity, everybody talks about Jesus nailed to the cross, Jesus, the Son of God, Jesus died and was brought back in 3 days. Those seem to be the things that everybody hinges around, and they got nothing to do with Christianity. Christianity is how to live a good life, how to live
That's
a better
right.
life, how to become one with God, how to understand. And Jesus said, doing to others as you're doing to yourself. Treat your brother as yourself. Those are the main meat of Christianity. But everybody wants to focus on things that don't have anything to do with what Jesus tried to teach. Have to do with it's like they wear a cross with Jesus nailed to it on around their neck. And I'm sure Jesus would think, why do you keep wanting to remind me of being crucified? Why do you even care about that? Why are you worshiping me? I try to teach you how to find God. I'm just the bringer of the story. And that's kind of the way I feel about Parakeet. The Parakeet stories are about how to live a good life, how to become one with nature, how to understand yourself, how to understand the energies that run through you, and become a better human being. The thing about the Toltecs and the palm tree, they're not main meat, no more than the cross and the crucifixion is with Jesus.
Right. Well, can we get into the
There's
energies and the
Gonna crucify me over that statement.
can we get into the energies then and the basics of it then? If we could explain that the basics to people. I mean, and if anybody wants to, we're trying to get the basics off to you, and then you can go to Larry's website, The Legend of Perakee, and there's, if you want to go deep, you can go deep into this. But can we give people a basic overview of the history, even though I know you don't like it, and then of the a basic overview of the principles and the philosophies of the energies, because yeah, they make a ton of sense to me.
All right, I'll just start talking and you tell me to shut up or tell me which way to go. As I understand it, the legend of Perakee, the stories that the Indians told, they talk about there's two main forces in the universe. There's life force and there's the earth energy. One is totally life and the other is totally dead. It's inanimate objects versus live things. And when the life force meets the inanimate part, when the white meets black, that's when magic happens. And everything in the universe is happening between those two forces. And the Parakeet used the colors of the rainbow to try to explain what happens during this very narrow spectrum. The black forces are inanimate forces, black energies, the earth energies. There's probably billions and trillions of them. And also in the life energies, the white energies, there's maybe billions and trillions of them. But all we can understand is what happens right here, right now, between the white and black, what happens right here. And they use the 21 colors of the rainbow. There's basically red, blue, and yellow. And then there's all the different variations, blue, yellow, blue, green, red, blue, orange. Those are just different variations. Those 21 colors they use to explain the 21 energies. There's 7 red energies, which are emotions. There's 7 intellectual energies, blue energies, which are the intellect. And there's 7 yellow energies, which are the instincts. And those are the life, the energies that run all through us. They're the ones that bring us alive. The black energies are a physical body. Our physical body, once you take away the life force, it's just a dead body. It's just nothing. It's just going to decay. It's a log. It's a rock. And you add the life force, which is white, you add that to it, and it comes alive. And all the different energies, the 21 energies that Perakee talks about, are the different things that have to do with what makes us alive.
Yeah, certain traits in a person and traits or habits or yeah, ways of acting like and like these are intensified. I mean, these aren't just principles like you say for a double simian person. These are ways of philosophies and ways of understanding that are for everybody. And so you and I are called a Perakee, but people that don't have this are called a Mahaka, or is that right?
Mahaka. They're the Perakee or people with the simian line. Mahaka are people who don't have the simian line.
Yeah.
That's all those two words mean.
But the principles work for everybody in either way, and the balancing of the energies, it, it works for everybody. It's just a little more intense for people with the simian lines, have a little more intense energy, and it's a little more imperative that we follow the principles and try to figure it out for ourselves, how to balance this energy, or it can consume or destroy us.
Yeah, the colors are just a didactic device to help us understand the energies. People text me all the time and say, how do I tell if I'm blue Parakeet? Do I turn blue at some point in my life? Or am I going to turn red? No, it got nothing to do with anything like that. It's just a way of looking at the energies to help you understand the energies. But the energies themselves aren't red, blue, and yellow, black, white. It's just a teaching tool.
Yeah, exactly. And can we get a little more into depth about the energies and as they apply? Do you have any more to say on that, into your life, and how you can apply them, or how you could recognize what they're in you, and how to balance them?
The emotions are called the red energies. They're the moon energies.
We froze for a sec, but I think we're good.
Sorry about that. I had my sister. I'll talk to her later.
Okay, yeah.
There's three main divisions of man. That's the emotions, the intellect, and the instincts. The emotions are called the red energies. They're the lunar qualities of man. The intellect is what's called the blue energies. They're the solar qualities of man. And then there's the instincts, which are the yellow energies, which are the earth energies. They're the closest thing to the earth. Well, a lot better if you read about it. Trying to explain it, I get, the instincts are what keeps us alive. They're not the body. The black energy is the body, but the instincts are the ones that keep us alive. They're food, sleep, breathing, drinking water, having babies, and survival. Those are the yellow energies. They got to do with survival, what keeps you alive. The blue energies are the intellect. They're the things that you like. And then, for instance, a person gets hungry. Okay. Then he goes to the blue energies. The blue energy says, all right, these are the things that are available for you to eat. And then he goes to the red energies and he chooses one of those. You got to eat, but how do you know what to eat? Well, it's got to do with your red energies by deciding what you want. Whether you want a banana, a piece of meatloaf, a watermelon, a hamburger. That's your red energies. The blue energies are your intellect, that you know what's available, ways that you can satisfy those basic needs, which are the yellow energies. It's so simple, but it's hard to explain.
yeah. That's it's basic principles. I think we got to that. I know you're apprehensive to do it, but can we explain to the people the like I read in the story there, like what the Perakee, like from what I read from you, they were like medicine men, like the story about how they would come take the kids away when they were 5 years old, They would just appear in the middle of the village at any given time, and then when they came, I believe it was to the Bow tribe, and they passed on and they planted trees and stuff like that. Can we tell the people about that story?
Well, that's the legend of Parakeet. Those are stories that are handed down for thousands of years, whether they're true stories or not, or if they're just Viking stories about Odin and Valhalla, those kind of things. We don't know. We don't know what the Bow tribe was like thousands of years ago. We know where they lived or whatever. Those are just stories that are handed down. The story goes that the Bow tribe was just an average Indian tribe in Arkansas, and lived in the woods of Arkansas, and they just lived like any other Indian village. You know, they hunted and fished, raised their children, and just did like anybody would, just living. And every once in a while, a child would be born into the village with the simian lines. He would have simian lines in both hands. And when he became 5 years old, some people would show up. My grandpa called them the Toltec devils. They would just show up and take the children, and nobody ever knew what happened to them. And everybody hated it when a Parakeet child was born into the village, because they knew they wouldn't get to keep him. They wouldn't get to raise him until he was adult, because he'd be taken away. And the people of Bow tribe hated these Toltec devils for stealing their children. But whenever they would encounter one of these Toltecs, he'd raise his hand and he'd show everybody that he was a Parakeet. He had a simian line. And it never dawned on his Bow tribe that these people that were coming back as Parakeet were the children that were being taken away when they were 5 years old. They were taken, they were trained, and then they became the teachers, the artisans, the protectors. They became the doctors, things like that. They were Parakeet. They were
Yeah,
people.
they were kind of like almost like druids, right? Mystics of the forest type of thing.
Yeah, a lot like the druids.
Yeah, practicers of the true knowledge and stuff like that, or mystical knowledge, as I like to look at it. Yeah. Then I was told, I can't remember. I think it's through legend of Perakee that like when two tribes would come to meet to war, if they had a Perakee, he would just come out and show his hands, and the other tribe would be like, "No, we don't want to fight. We give up. We don't want nothing to do with you guys. Got a wizard. We don't want to mess around with you guys."
That's one of the stories that was told. One of the myths that's handed down, that these Parakeet would these Toltecs, who were Parakeet, but they're from the Toltec Empire apparently. They'd come and go on missions of their own, and occasionally one of them would cross one of the Indian lands. And of course, the Indians didn't like trespassers. You know, we've all seen Hollywood stories. We've all read stories of how the Indians love to fight. They'd see a trespasser on their land, and they'd come riding up to them, or back before they had horses, they'd come walking up to them, but they'd have their swords and everything. But all this Toltec would do is raise his hand. As soon as they saw that he was a Parakeet, they'd stop. They wouldn't fight. They said to harm him meant start war. They really honored these people. They worshipped them. They were like gods to these poor, ignorant native savages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. And now you told me before about the Freemasonry and Rosicrucian. Did they have any knowledge of this sort of thing, or anything about simian lines, or do they know anything about that, or just hogwash to them?
I was involved with Rosicrucians about 3 years, and they never mentioned anything about it. They don't have any stories of Parakeet or simian lines or anything. There's a lot of palmistry. There's a lot of mystics. There are people into palmistry. And I show my hands, and there's, oh, you got simian lines. Like it's nothing. But they couldn't tell me anything about me. They didn't know what the lines meant. Some of them would say they just didn't know. They
Yeah,
didn't have any idea.
some cultures, through my research, like, some cultures see it as a blessing and some as a curse. Like in most Asian countries, it's very, very lucky. And then when you get to the Middle East, from what I've read, now I'm reading on the internet, I don't know if it's true, but in Islam and Judaism, the people born with double simian lines were demons and and demigods, and were evil, and they would get rid of them right away at birth and didn't want nothing to do with them. So
Yeah.
it's
It
a
was.
funny thing to have these lines and on your hands and hear all these stories about them. And depending on where you were born, it could have been a really good for you or really bad for you.
Yeah, one story my grandpa told me that I remember. He said in Europe during the Middle Ages, people had simian lines were burned at the stake. The church thought they were witches. I don't know if it's because people with simian lines are bullheaded and wouldn't do what the church told them to. I don't know what the real story is, but my grandpa said that most of the Parakeet in Europe were burned. That's why there's very few white people who have simian lines. There are a lot of Asian people have them, a lot of Indian, Native American people have them, and I think a lot of black people have them, but very few white people have them.
Yeah, through I can't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, it's I think the highest numbers are in Asian people.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to Europeans, it's almost non-existent. It's less than like 1% of 1% of the population. It's pretty low. But yeah,
Okay.
with the
Okay.
energies, even before
Your son's gonna have to edit this out. I gotta go to the bathroom.
yeah, no problem. Well, let's take a break. I'll go to the bathroom too.
All right. Sorry about that. That's one of the bad things about getting old. Your parents won't let you do a lot of things without having to go to the bathroom first.
It's no problem. It's Saturday. I've had a few beer myself. I was screaming for a break myself.
Well, go ahead. I'll wait on you.
No, I went the same time you did. Okay. So
All right.
no, so could you tell me, like, I've always been fascinated by Freemasonry and Rosicrucian, but I'm of the internet age, paranoia, conspiracy, this and that, like that organized, anything organized, I distrust. Lots of rumors, lots of things that there's dark things that go on there, dark ceremonies, channeling dark forces. It's neither here nor there because I've never seen it or experienced myself. When secrecy comes into anything, people are always going to question it, right? If it's a secret society or a closed society, people that aren't a part of it, of course, are going to criticize it and go, "What are they hiding?" and this and that. And I'm just, I've always studied, I've always been fascinated, and just your thoughts or anything, because I know you guys can't tell your secrets, but anything you can tell me about Freemasonry or Rosicrucian would be very much appreciated.
Let me put it this way. You can't get hardly two people to agree on anything. You get two Catholics or two Baptists, and they're on the surface, they're compatible. You put them in a room by themselves, in 30 minutes, they're in a fist fight.
Yeah.
Nobody can agree. And for conspiracy theories to be true, conspiracy to be true, you have to have millions of people agreeing to something, and everybody keeping it secret, nobody talking about it. I can't see that happening. There's no way in the world. Yet millions of people or thousands of people in a group of one kind or another to agree to take over the earth. Is that what they is? A lot of people think that I think people, they're dissatisfied with their lives and they want to blame somebody or something. So they want to blame secret societies, or if the atheists blame the religious people blame the Satanists, and everybody blames everybody else. The Rosicrucians and the Masons and other groups, but those two are the ones we're talking about. They try to help people live better lives. And basically they're saying like the Perakee. They're just trying to help people live better lives. Now the Rosicrucians go about it different than the Masons. The Rosicrucians are more mystical. They're more into mysticism. They're more into going inside, meditation, learning about yourself, becoming closer to the Godhead through meditation, trying to understand why you're here and what your life is on earth. Masons try to make people better by public works through civil activities. They go out, they raise charities, they have a lot of money, they have burn hospitals. They make people better through helping people. Where the Rosicrucians try to make people better by going inside and meditate, becoming a better people on the inside. And Parakeet, they're a combination of both, I think you could say. I try to help people understand for us to be better, we have to understand the energies that run through us so we can understand them and balance them so we can be better human beings. And in the process, that makes us better civic-minded people. So we're Parakeet are people who try to be better by understanding themselves, and then that in turn makes them be better humans by going out and helping others.
Well, yeah, that's because both are important. Being internal and dealing with your own issues, that's very important. And living a life of service and action, that's super important. I mean, being raised so close with my grandparents, they got up at 4 or 5 in the morning and went till 10 at night, and they were involved in every aspect of life, community, everything. The Cancer Society, the Arthritis Society, the hospital board, the school board, everything they could get their hands on, they were involved in their community, making a difference, having their voice, doing so. And that is lost in this day and age. That living a life of volunteer and service is lost in this day and age. And we really need to bring that back.
That's what the Freemasons are trying to get back and keep people doing. They're being involved in the community and everybody helping each other out in the community. That's the basis of Freemasonry. The basis of Rosicrucianism is right the opposite. Instead of going out and being in community minded and civic minded, go inside the closet and shut the door like Jesus taught. Go into meditation, mysticism, as opposed to the Rosicrucians more mystic, more mystically oriented, more occultic, whereas Freemasons are not. They're right the opposite. How anybody can think they're in a conspiracy to take over the world, I have no idea.
I'm sure there's not, especially down at the regular working man's lodges and this and that. I think it's what most people would be concerned about is the power of that unity of that many people, influential people, working together. If they did, that it would be a concerning thing if said thing were happening, right? And I don't think the day-to-day lodge members like my grandfather, like yourself, or anybody are part of some grand conspiracy. I think people that got too much time on their hands possibly are sitting there concerned about, worried about the secrecy and worried about the power, because it does seem to be the most influential people in town, the more wealthy people in town usually, and stuff that are involved in this, the people involved in politics and those sorts of things. So that probably scares people, I think.
All the Rosicrucians I was ever involved with were really, really nice people. All the Masons I've ever been involved with are really, really nice people. All the Christians I've ever been involved with are really, really nice people. All the people in the voodoo and Satanism and all these other things, they're all really, really nice people, but they hate each other. Why? Yeah. I don't know. It's like they're using conspiracy theories as just a tool, as a reason to hate other people. I don't know. It don't make sense.
Yeah, we're all one. It's just like Democrat or Republican or anything like that, right? The more they have us fighting with each other, the more we're not looking at the real assholes that are keeping us all down, right?
now the Muslims and Christians hurt each other. So the average Muslim is just like me and you, just want to be left alone, raise their kids, go to school, have food to eat. They don't want to bother nobody. The average Christian is just the same way. They want to be left alone so they can raise their children, have a happy home, have food on the table. That's all they want. There's a few oddball Christians who who want to hurt people who are like all the people that got involved with Trump here a while back, the white Aryan society. They're all Christian, I think. They say they're Christian, but there's a few bad apples in the Christian society, and there's a few jihadists, bad apples in the Muslim society. But the Muslims as a whole are really nice people. All the ones I were involved with were nice people, most of them. And same thing with Christians. If anything, I say that I run into more bad Christians than I have bad Muslims.
I can understand that. I came from a very small community, and like I say, good people all around, got hardworking country people, but I found the snobbiest people to be the most churchy people. And I always just found it comical because, I mean, if you're trying to embody and follow the practices of Jesus, you wouldn't be a snob. You'd be accepting and loving and caring and kind to everybody. And like you said, I found them to be the snobbiest of all of them and the most uncaring of all of them. You were to find probably more fellowship down at the local bar than you would hanging out with them.
Yeah. If you want a reason to be unhappy, you'll find a reason to be unhappy. You want to find a reason to hate somebody, you can find a reason. If you want to find a reason to be happy, you can find those reasons too. It's up to everybody. It's up to everybody to have their own life, choose their own way of living. Why they want to hate each other, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. Well, Larry, I think we've killed it. I think we got. You got anything else you want to say about the legend Parakeet? Any other pertinent knowledge?
We could have one of these every Saturday for the next 5 years and still not have everything said.
Oh, this is only the first. This is only the first.
Hopefully we got some of the basics out of the way. I know we didn't get everything explained to everybody's satisfaction. Maybe if people start writing in questions, we'll know more which way to go. Like I said, I've been living with this stuff for all my life, my entire life. I'm trying to explain it to somebody in just a few minutes, in an hour. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, and everybody listening, you can find, just Google it. It's easy to find. It's on Google. It's on YouTube. I've even found it. The Legend of Perakee, and like Larry's telling you, there is a.
Yeah, well, it's died again, I think.
There we go. There we go. So if I cut out, ladies and gentlemen, check out The Legend of Perakee. There's a wealth of knowledge. As I was just saying, it took me 3 days while I was camping to read it, 3 or 4 hours here or there to read the whole thing. I read it from a Friday to a Sunday. And we were just trying to give you the basics. And yeah, I think we did a great job of that, Larry.
Our Facebook group is called The Legend of Parakeet, and it's open to everybody. It's public knowledge. I refuse to not let anybody be a part of it. I've had different people with simian lines who said they didn't want people without simian lines in part of the group, but you'd be surprised at how many people without simian lines have contacted me because their child has simian lines, their husband has simian lines, their uncle has simian lines. They want to learn more about simian lines. So I'm not going to say who can join the group, and it's open to everybody.
Well, we're not easy people to deal with, so I hear. So maybe, yeah, it's almost like a support group for the survivors of the simians.
The Parakeet knowledge was freely given to me, so I'm giving it out to the world. It belongs to the world. It's not mine. Anybody can have it. All they got to do is come be a part of the group. Or if they want to read it for themselves, go to Parakeet.com. It's real simple, Parakeet.com, and sit down and read it. If you have any questions, contact me. My email is on the site, or you can join the group and talk to not only me, but thousands of people that are part of the group. We love to have everybody. But just because a person has simian lines, that don't make him any more special or not special than somebody who doesn't have simian lines. We're all in this thing together, this thing called life. That's what Parakeet is about, trying to help each other live a better life.
Yeah, that's it too. No matter what philosophy or creed you follow, and that's what really resonated with me about the whole story. It seemed to hit. I've studied, like you said, everything out there. I've so many years in mining camps, endlessly YouTubing, endlessly reading every religion, every philosophy, science, this and that. And as I read the legend, it was just like bang, 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 bang. It was hitting on lots of bases for me, things that I liked. I've always picked and sifted through things that made sense to me, and kind of built my own religion around the Force, kind of like from Star Wars. That's kind of how I always saw it, and that's how I always kind of lived. It was my understanding, being sensitive to energies, and then when I found the Legend of Parakeet, I was like, wow, now this makes a lot of sense. It's hitting in all the spots that I kind of picked apart for myself. It was almost like it was knowledge that was hidden already within me that I knew. I already knew it. That it was strange.
That's what I try to tell people. That we all have energy. We all have the same energies, and we can look at them and call them whatever we want. You want to call it the Force of Star Wars, or you want to call it Ki or Chi or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter.
Reiki. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I think we killed it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here for the first Perakee podcast, one of many more. We're going to get all kinds of folks with all kinds of stories on here, and it's going to be a good thing, I think. Larry, don't go anywhere. I'm just going to stop the recording.
All right.